Welcome back. The war has been a major setback to Sri Lanka in terms of economy and development. The government is faced with the task of getting the country back on track, and the grant of the unprecedented $2.6 billion loan by the International Monetary Fund, or IMF, is going to help them do just that. Still, the grant of this loan and the conditions that the government has had to agree to in order to get it have been issues of contention, especially amongst opposition politicians. I spoke with economist Dr. Harsha de Silva to find out more. Hi, Dr. Harsha. Thanks so much for joining me on the program.
Nice to be here, Tarika.
The IMF loan, everyone's talking about it, but I think to someone who's not an economist, it's quite a difficult concept to grasp. So my talk with you is aimed at sort of demystifying the loan and finding out what it's all about and its significance to Sri Lanka at the moment. So to start off with, what is the significance of this loan and the fact that we got it right now in Sri Lanka?
Well, IMF loans are not given if people don't really need such loans. Essentially, if you are in trouble, you go to the IMF and you ask for, these are usually called bailout facilities. So we got bailed out in 2001 because things were terrible in 2000 in terms of essentially balance of payments problems, because these IMF facilities are to support the balance of payments. They're not for sort of your regular development projects, right? So when a country is unable to meet its foreign liabilities in terms of meeting the import-export differentials, foreign loans that need to be paid, and if you're in trouble and exchange rate is taking a terrible hit and so on, and your reserves are falling, that's when you go to the IMF. So in 2000, we had a terrible situation with respect to the balance of payments, and we got one in 2001, I think something like $250 million. Then again in 2001, our economy actually crashed. We went negative GDP and things were terrible. And then they started negotiating in 2002 with then Ranil Wickremesinghe government. And in 2003, I believe early 2003, March or April, we got a $567 million facility. And then this time we went again for what's called a standby arrangement, just like the one we did in 2001 after the 2000 debacle, which are essentially bailouts. And this one is a massive, gigantic facility, $2.6 billion.
But being a loan, it has to be paid back, right, in 4 or 5 years?
Yes, you have to pay this back in almost 4.5 to 5 years in tranches, and we'll receive all the money within 20 months if and only if we meet the conditions which will be reviewed almost every 3 months.
Okay, speaking of these conditions, now the UNP, the opposition politicians from the UNP have said that these conditions that the government has agreed to are totally unrealistic. What do you think of this allegation?
Well, actually, there is only one overarching condition. One.
Which is?
Which is that the government has to abide by the Fiscal Management Responsibility Act, passed in Parliament in 2003. In 2003, under the Ranil Wickremesinghe government, a piece of legislation was passed called the Fiscal Management Responsibility Act, and the primary criteria was to bring the deficit down to 5% by 2006. Now, with the election of the Rataperata government in 2004 and the subsequent Rajapaksa presidency in 2005, what happened was every budget postponed that 2006 5% budget deficit target to the next year. 2007, 8, 9, 10, I think now it is 12 or something like that.
I think 2011.
Right, yeah. So now what has happened is IMF has said, look, no running away from this. You have to address this problem. If you are willing to address this problem, if you are willing to sign on the condition that you will bring down the deficit to 5%, we will give you the money.
And do you think we can?
We can. We have to. It is critically important that we do. But the thing is, there are two ways in which we can do this. One is to reduce what is called recurrent expenditure. The parties we have, the unnecessary expenditure. The other is to cut down on capital expenditure, right? Which is the funding that goes for long-term infrastructure in education, building schools, buying computers, building hospitals, spending on operating theaters, things like that. And another area is, and we have agreed to this as a condition, to make the Ceylon Petroleum Corporation and the Ceylon Electricity Board viable again, right? The losses in these institutions are mind-boggling, right? And every year we put money into, bridging these losses, right? So we need to be able to reduce the losses of the state enterprises.
Now, post-conflict reconstruction is a big area that Sri Lanka needs to focus on at the moment. How will the loan contribute towards this? Will it?
No, it will not contribute towards any reconstruction. Not a cent of this IMF money can be used to build a single facility for the IDPs or anything like that. That money is not for that. Having said that, you must realize money is fungible, right? I mean, it goes into one pot and then you can use it for this, that or the other. So technically, it is not possible. But, like I said earlier, by showing this availability of these funds so that we will not be in trouble, we raise other monies, and those other monies will then be used for reconstruction to build bridges and roads and ports and things like that. So this helps in an indirect way, not directly this money. But also you must remember that one of the conditions IMF put to give this money is that the government cannot borrow more than 1.75 billion in commercial money in the next 20 months. So it can't just go borrow willy-nilly, right? There are restrictions there as well. You see, something that people like myself have been arguing for a long time is to think outside this box, that reform is critical, that the government need not be the monopoly investor in infrastructure in Sri Lanka.
But if not the government, then who?
Then who? Look at progressive countries in the world. I mean, no need to go too far. Look at India. I just heard the other day in the state of Kerala, 50% of the graduates come from private universities, right? So the point is, we must liberalize, reform, particularly, higher education, so that there will be greater investments into higher education. So the government doesn't have to borrow and build more universities. It cannot. It just doesn't have the money. So what do? Right? If I don't have the money, do I say, I don't have the money, so therefore I will not be able to help all those people who I need? Are there alternative ways? You see, I am not for a moment saying to take away free education. I am saying you keep free education. Certain people who will do very well will get everything free, right? Or else you look at the other model.